Joining us for this particular segment is two gentlemen who I've had the pleasure and to chat with in the past, and they are looking for your vote in November for the general election. We have State Representative Dave DeCoste, who is kind of a fixture on Monday Night Talk and also on the JV team. And of course, that's a built-in segue to the other guest, who is Jared Valenzola, who is the host of the JV team. You can hear every Wednesday night at 6:15 p.m. as he's a radio show host, and he's also an elected official. You elected or appointed in Rockland, is it?
We're elected, planning board.
Yep. And you're elected to the planning board.
And recently reelected.
And he wants to take it to the next level, as he wants to be one of your next two county commissioners in Plymouth County. Gentlemen, welcome to the segment.
Well, glad to be here, Kevin, and thank you for having us on.
Always great to be back on Monday Night Talk with you, Kevin. Thanks for having me on again.
So I got to ask, the primary is in the rearview mirror. What do you take from this particular primary? And again, if you could be as nonpartisan as possible, whether you look at the U.S. Senate race, whether you look at some of the other races as they happened on the South Shore around the Commonwealth, share your thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with the Republican primary for U.S. Senate, which was, of course, the undercard to the Kennedy-Markey primary. I think on the Republican side, you had a candidate in Dr. Shiva who had run before. He kamikazed Rep. Jeff Deal in 2018 as an independent. And he came back to the party. And what I think is interesting is occasionally in Republican politics, anyway, in Massachusetts, you have the occasional candidate, fringe candidate like a Dr. Shiva, who stakes out a populist position and wins the primary. It was interesting for me to see that was actually reversed last Tuesday evening, and not only reversed, but it wasn't even close, with Kevin O'Connor polling a 60-40 win. So I personally was surprised by that margin a little bit. I can attribute it to being a very low Republican primary turnout, based again on Kennedy-Markey having sort of the dominant position. And then Kevin, of course, you alluded to my race for Plymouth County Commissioner. I congratulate all four of the Democrats who ran last week. They all put in great performances. I watched obviously their campaigns, and I'm excited for the next step, facing off against two of the four. And I can say that I was surprised a little bit by some of the results from their primary, but overall it went about as I had expected as well.
Dave, your thoughts?
Well, the only thing I would add is that it was interesting to watch over the other side, as Jared alluded to. We had the only race really that we had that brought any attention was the O'Connor-Shiva race, and I think the only thing I'd add to that, it's normally an unwritten rule that typically people don't endorse people during the primaries. Jared has warned me before, as my former campaign manager, now he's running his own campaign, that you can get into trouble doing that inadvertently, especially when you have friends running against each other. But it was interesting with the race between Kevin O'Connor and Dr. Shiva that every elected Republican that I knew in the area was backing O'Connor. And that said something, I think, about the potential that I think both of them were perceived to have in the end run. It's always a good bet that the Democrat will win a Senate race in Massachusetts. But I think of the two of them, I think Kevin O'Connor clearly was the better candidate. And I would encourage everyone to give Kevin O'Connor a good look, because he's a very, very capable, even-minded, good government type Republican, I would say. And the only other point I would make was that this was the first time when you really had a number of races in the Democratic primary that really got people to show up. You had the race regarding the state Senate, between Senator Brady's seat, where Senator Brady held on, but it was really, I think the progressive or left wing of the party was really behind his opponent. You saw the same thing where a similar candidate was one of the four running to be the to run to be the on the county commission, and then finally the race between Congressman Kennedy and Senator Markey, which generated an enormous amount of interest. So you had, in fact, over the Democratic side, just really lot of turnout, which is unusual to that extent, I think.
If I can give kudos to State Committee Man Jeff Deal, I saw him everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's a project that needs to be pitched, he'd be the perfect guy.
Mm-hmm.
I think he did a great job. I saw him out down in Plymouth with Kevin O'Connor, giving a great plug and helping Republicans who are trying to get the vote out. What does Kevin O'Connor have to do differently than what Jeff Deal did when it came to running against Elizabeth Warren?
I think they are different races. I'll start, Kevin. They are different races. I'm not sure. Maybe Rep. DeCoste knows this answer, or yourself. I'm not sure if there are any independents. If there are, they're not as well funded as Dr. Shiva was.
Yep.
So that is a big intangible. I think he got 3 or 4% statewide, so he did peel some votes away. I think facing Senator Markey presents a different set of challenges. One of the things, and I know Rep. DeCoste has often made this compliment, but when I worked for former Senator, now Mayor of Weymouth, Bob Hedlund, I can tell you if there was any issues that we ever needed some federal assistance on, we could always call Senator Markey's office. The phone would always be answered, and there'd be a follow-up whether there was something they could do or not do. There was always an interaction there. And frankly, we could never get through to Senator Warren's office. They were more interested. And at first, I thought it was a partisan thing with Hedlund being a Republican, but that was sort of the sentiment throughout the entire building, was that there's really no engagement. So I think that left Senator Warren more vulnerable than perhaps Senator Markey would be, because there's a lot of interaction that exists between the legislature and Senator Markey's office that will endear a lot of them to Senator Markey. And I think, Rep. DeCoste can probably maybe affirm this or maybe tell me I'm wrong, but I think there's a lot of elected Democrats that supported Senator Markey based on that. And that goes a long way. So what can Kevin O'Connor do differently? I think there's definitely an opportunity that exists in Massachusetts, and he has said this himself. When a Democrat in Massachusetts runs too far to the left, that's when you start to have an opportunity for a Republican to potentially have an upset. And it's obviously no secret. Senator Markey ran as far to the left as I think anybody has ever seen any Democrat run in Massachusetts. And in doing so, obviously their focus was their primary. They figure it's all over and it's all set. Kevin O'Connor can start really engaging centrist voters, middle of the road voters, even center-left voters who aren't as far to the left as Senator Markey. He has a legitimate shot, and I think he can do that. He has the right messaging, and he has the right statements behind him to get that done. So there is a real opportunity there for Kevin O'Connor if he can really start engaging those middle of the road voters.
Representative, your thoughts?
Yeah, I'm just as you probably see my eyes rolling up here on the Zoom. I agree with everything that he says, and I can tell you that the next workday, which I guess is is going to be first thing in the morning. I'm going to call Jim Cantwell, former Rep. Cantwell, who's just a terrific member of the Markey team, and we're going to be talking about a young lady who we're trying to get into the Air Force Academy from Hanover. She was good enough to be holding on the DeCoste team and holding some signs, and we're going to be working to get, because of COVID, the response times of all the service academies are sluggish. But it is always heartening for me to hear from a younger man or woman that they're interested in the military and the service academies. And so the first thing in the morning we're going to be calling, and to be honest, he is our go-to guy. He's the first guy we call to get things done in the federal level, whether it's again an action that needs to be worked through our service academies or immigration or social security or veterans benefits. So Senator Markey has really made his mark as a constituent service champion. That said, he, as Jared pointed out, has really aligned himself with the the extreme of his party. Well, I think nobody is ever going to accuse Kevin O'Connor of everything. I would say he is, you know, a moderate conservative. He is certainly, and this is where we share, he was a son of a Marine Corps veteran, as a matter of fact. And we share some common concerns regarding both, and I know Jared does as well, regarding both law enforcement, the current attack on law enforcement, and you know, the potential of weakening and maintaining strong benefits for veterans, and also a strong national defense. And these type of things, I think, he'll be really be able to contrast himself with Senator Markey. That, and the fact he's, of course, spent his entire life in the private sector, which is certainly a contrast.
Let's talk a little bit about your own particular races. That was the main focus of having both of you on. You know, two Republicans here down on the South Shore, two different races. Starting with you, Jared. You know, you had a chance to kind of watch and see as the Democrats whittle the numbers down, and now it's time for you to jump into the arena. You know, I'm sure you get forums that are coming up. How do you tackle this? And what's your message in regards to being the next county commissioner?
Yeah, you know, Kevin, my message is definitely to make Plymouth County government rock. Try to work Plymouth Rock in there somehow, but I think there's definitely potential with Plymouth County government, and to that end, outgoing Commission Chairman Dan Pallotta has done a great job of really setting in motion a lot of what county government can potentially be doing. I think county government offers an opportunity for regionalizing services that are redundant in a lot of communities. It has the opportunity to be a pioneer in a lot of different ways. You know, one of the things that I think I talked about it the last time you had me on, but it's my loftiest goal, which is to establish a county grant writing office. A lot of towns cannot afford a full-time staff member to write grants. And there's a lot of money available to the city of Brockton and the towns in Plymouth County. So on a prorated basis, we would ask the communities to contribute. We would hire grant writers on a county level. They would write the grants on behalf of the towns and then give them back to the towns to submit as the town. You know, so for example, if Kingston or Duxbury wants to write a grant or they need a grant written, you send the information to the grant writing office. They write it. They in turn send it back. And then now you're on your way, and they submit it. And by doing that, by saving towns money, because ultimately as a Republican, I do enjoy making government efficient, and I have a track record of doing that even in the committee involvements I've been in Rockland. We built, I was on the school building committee that built a brand new middle school attached to a fully renovated high school, came in $1 million under budget. We used that money to be seed money for a brand new elementary school. We're now in the process of doing that, and I'm on that committee as well. But so to answer, to get back to the question though, you know, at least one of my opponents, to the best of my knowledge, worked in a previous time to eliminate the county in full, and I don't think that's necessary. Should we ever get to a point where the county is no longer performing or doesn't have this potential, or you know, the other option is the towns aren't interested. You know, I could, when I'm elected, I can easily go to all 27 communities and pitch these ideas, and they could all send me packing, right? So it's really a matter of what the will of the people are. So, and that's at least a contrast with one of my opponents. I'm not totally in favor of getting rid of county government. I believe there's an opportunity for it. But again, I don't shut the door to the idea that if we can't make the county, continue a lot of what Commissioner Pallotta and Commissioner Wright and others on the county commission have started, if we can't get it, going down that road, then we look at all options. But I believe in county government, and I think it offers an opportunity to be a vehicle for regionalizing services and really saving taxpayers money and creating efficiencies in government.
Representative DeCoste, you will have an opponent come November talk to me about the successes that you've seen during your last session in office, and where you feel where the conversation is going to go when it comes time for you to square off with your opposition.
Well, I can tell you where our emphasis has been, and certainly where, with interactions with the leaderships of all three towns, and I'm glad to have the endorsement of many selectmen from all three towns and present and past, where that we're going. And there were a number of things that come to mind, and let me touch on three in particular. Number one is the schools and school funding. Now, we have up till now had very good response in terms of funding, at least through this fiscal year, in making sure that we did not have the type of layoffs that were originally anticipated because of the virus. Now, that will be a priority through the next year. And I can tell you, we're working very hard in our caucus, the GOP caucus, and that is our priority. It may be a pipe dream, but I'd also at some point like to have the entire school funding. And I know the governor shares this, I think, and as do many of my colleagues. I think that the current funding formula skews too much to the urban areas, and that we need to take a look at how funding is distributed. And frankly, whether or not in the future we should take any, and there may not be a surplus, but any surpluses might be redistributed rather than worked out as earmarks. Every session, the GOP proposes an amendment that will, instead of using the excess funding for earmarks, would instead just simply redistribute a large amount using the funding formula. And each year it's defeated. But I think that needs to be looked at. Also, law enforcement. As you know, we have for my opinion, a terrible policing bill that will really do great damage to the ability not only of law enforcement officers to do their job, but also just in the safety and safety and personal ability of their families to live safely. And to the bill as written, as passed by the Senate, you could potentially sue a police officer personally for pulling you over as a result of the suspension of qualified immunity. So we're going to be looking at that. There'll be some policing bills, but hopefully those will be limited, and especially they'll be formulated with the input of the law enforcement experts and not outside sources, many of whom are frankly quite hostile to the police. And when I sit on the transportation, I can tell you a number of local issues. We've had some successes, whether it be the repaving on Route 53, the intersections over in Liberty Street and East Water, which had been a dangerous area. And I can, Dave Taylor and Mike O'Laughlin and their teams over in Rockland have really done a terrific job fixing that. And we're working right now with the Transportation Conference Committee to make sure that funding is retained. I had funding at the House bill where the intersection in Route 139 in the vicinity of the Congregational Church across from the library in Hanover is really a dangerous intersection that needs to be looked at, and we've had a funding in that to get it re-examined and redesigned and basically replaced. The thinking is perhaps a rotary, but that is only because currently MassDOT favors rotaries and they work otherwise. But right now, that is one of the areas that my emphasis is on as I speak to you.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of rotaries. Anybody who's had to go down the Cape, even though now it's kind of a little bit different, and there's still traffic. There was nothing worse than trying to find your way in and out of that rotary. And I see roundabouts everywhere these days: Duxbury, Pembroke, you name it. I think they're not worth it. But that's another conversation for another day.
Well, keep in mind that the one in Duxbury, I think if you're talking the one on Route 114 rather, works fairly well in my experience. And plus, one thing a rotary does do, or a roundabout, is that you don't need to wait there at the lights at 6 a.m. in the morning waiting for things to turn. It slows people down, but that area in Hanover and 138-9 is an accident waiting to happen. It really is a public safety problem, and that has been raised to me both by both police, fire, and the town manager and the board. I've had discussions about this with both John Tuzik and Dave Delaney, who are selectmen and current and former chair of the Board of Selectmen in Hanover. Something's got to be done, and so right now we're working on that.
Okay. We have a little less than 10 minutes left in our conversation, gentlemen, so we'll try to be a little bit more brief so we can have a little bit more conversation. Dave, you had mentioned about law enforcement reform, the bill that's been put forth. The newest item in regards to the blue line and the flag. Do you feel that social issues like this are going to blur each of your individual races as to where, I don't want to say blur, but as though those issues will hijack certain races and dominate how folks will vote come November? Jared, do you think it'll have an effect on your race, social issues like Black Lives Matter or, police reform, or should there be a blue line in the American flag, and should a police department be allowed to fly it?
Yeah, I mean, to that end, Kevin, when you're running, frankly, with a presidential election, all of those issues in a myriad of others that might come to the forefront between now and November 3rd will inevitably bleed into ours. Rep DeCoste, myself, we are Republicans, we're branded Republicans, and what comes with that. To that end, I think for myself, and I think Rep DeCoste and legislative candidates, especially in Massachusetts, are going to have to answer this more. County commission is a different sort of, it's different. I mean, we don't have any say in any of those issues, frankly. There isn't a lot the county commission can do with those. But that said, I think there are people who will identify us with our respective, being in our respective party, and they're going to attach certain assumptions to it. To that end, how it might affect myself personally in my race, I think, throughout Plymouth County, I support law enforcement. I'm not shy about it. I attend back to blue rallies. Certainly Rep DeCoste and I have talked on the JV team and on other, avenues that what has happened in Minneapolis with George Floyd was atrocious and unacceptable and should never happen again. And steps in Minneapolis especially need to be taken to make sure it doesn't. But to that end, here in Massachusetts and in our pocket of the world, the issues will come up, but at least for my race specifically, I don't see it being one of those topics that enters into the conversation because, again, the county commission doesn't really have much of a say with those.
But I think you kind of touched upon it, though, is if you're somebody who is, you're a Republican, you're somebody who is a supporter of Blue Lives Matter or of the police, then that could be something that folks go, it may not have anything to do with your particular race, but you as an individual could be something that would affect. Dave, your question to you, same question to you, Dave. Do you feel that, that reform bill is something that folks are looking at and looking to make moves, whether it's your race or any other races?
Well, I'm in an unusual position because I've been targeted by those organizations. I am the number one target of, I would say, those organizations that are working against the police. There's no question in my mind. And, the fact that the supporting the police has not been a recent issue for me. When I ran my first campaign on advocating the reinstitution of the death penalty for cop killers, and I continue to do that. I've sponsored legislation to raise the penalty for assaulting a police officer from a misdemeanor to a felony. I am going to be, I think, endorsed by most, if not all, major law enforcement institutions in the state, and certainly by DA Cruz and Sheriff Hodson, Sheriff Cunningham, and our own, of course, Sheriff McDonald. Yep. So I'm not shy at all about being, and I don't look at it being pro-police. I just look at it being common sense and you know, supporting our law enforcement with common sense regulations, and not undermining them.
What would you guys each say are the issues you look to discuss in an open forum or be able to discuss with folks in the next couple of months leading up to the general election? Jared?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I think is important for Plymouth County Commission especially is making it relevant, and continuing to prove that that it can be a functional operation, you know, within the county. You know, to that end, you know, look, I have the support of every elected Republican House member in the county. The sheriff and the district attorney have endorsed me, as have County Commissioner Pilata and Wright. So, and that's kind of cutting a large swath of people and their perceptions of county government. But what was important for me in engaging the legislators was to open that dialogue now, so when elected, we can keep having that dialogue. And obviously, I will, you know, look forward to having that same dialogue with the Democrat delegation in Plymouth County as well, and showing them that there's opportunity to really be an effective and efficient government entity in Massachusetts. And I've started those conversations already with members of the legislature, and all of them, like I said, to some degree, to varying degrees, some support, some don't, some have had different experiences with county government. But after a conversation with them, they all support me, and they all support my ideas and my vision for where we can bring county government. So given the opportunity in the next 2 months, that's absolutely what I'm going to hammer home, is there's opportunity here to be an effective and efficient government entity in Massachusetts.
Same with you, Dave. Dave, we just got a couple of minutes left here. What are you looking forward to taking the gloves off and engaging not only voters, whether you do it virtually or your opposition, in talking about issues? What are you looking forward to?
I think most broadly, Kevin, is we're in a really questioning how and using what emphasis is the best way to turn and make sure Massachusetts remains a great place to live, raise a family, start a business, and even, you know, live your entire life. So we're looking at everything from local issues, it's just cleaning up the fireworks in Hanover, making sure that intersection gets done, building a new 40B in the center of Rockland that's coming up. That hasn't quite been discussed, but we've got some good news there. Working on issues along the North River, and the water quality issues with you know, my counterparts in the other party, and Senator O'Connor. So there are just a plethora of issues and how to go about it, and that raises you know, questions about everything from the levels of taxation and how we tax, to whether or not support the police and how we support them. And so there are plenty of issues and things to touch on.
Dave, your website, if folks want to find out more about your campaign?
citizensfordecoste.com.
Jared, same with you?
VoteValenzola.com.
Gentlemen, I want to thank you both. We should have done an hour, because I think we could have talked about more, especially the fact that Jared is wearing a Boston Red Sox shirt. And that's you know, that's
might be a bad omen considering how poorly they are playing this year.
Well, I mean, look, the other night they took a no-hitter into the 7th inning and still lost. So
that's true. You know, at the end of the day, what better way to, all things considered, if they have to rebuild, it may as well have been this season. And it seems like right now they're just bringing every possible kid they can in, putting them in, and seeing what they got for the future. So, Frank, as a Red Sox season ticket holder, I guess I'll live with it.
That's what it's about to be a fan. Dave, quickly.
Hope springs eternal. Hope springs eternal for the Red Sox.
Absolutely.
There you go.
Absolutely.
Thank you guys so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Kevin. Have a good day.